Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Made You Book. My name's Gretchen, and today what I want to talk about are some of those books that I always find myself reaching for whenever the weather turns from summer to fall and you have like that first really rainy, gloomy, cold, depressing fall day. So I live in Pittsburgh and we had one of those days yesterday, and I started to think about all of those comfort reads that I have, or those books that always kind of like match that mood or atmosphere. So I went through my bookshelves and I found some of those books that I like to read on those types of days. And I'm going to talk about them with you. And we're also supposed to have kind of more of the same. I don't think it's supposed to be as cold or rainy as it was yesterday, but we are supposed to get some showers. And I will also share with you the book that I plan on curling up with today. So one other thing, I understand that these types of books are not always going to be to everyone's taste. There are very mild and accessible books that I'm going to talk about, and then there are some very dark and disturbing books that are on this list as well. So I'm going to kind of start from the top and work my way down to the darkest of those books. So first and foremost, I have one of my favorite authors, and I think that I go to his books a lot in the fall and winter, and this is it was a challenge for me to pick just one, and I was actually going back and forth between two, but I eventually settled on Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book. Now, The Graveyard Book is super atmospheric. It is a fun story about an infant that was orphaned because his parents were murdered, and he is kind of taken in and raised in a cemetery by all of the spirits that reside there. There's also kind of like this benefactor character that is able to go between the two worlds, the worlds of the living on the outside of the cemetery gates, and then he is able to enter and leave the cemetery and also interact with the spirit world that's there. And there's also another character named Jack, and Jack is the one that murdered Bods, who is the main character's parents. And there is kind of like that suspense, that thrillery component to this, as there is that hunt. And I think that this is a great book for this time of year. I mean, obviously it's set in a graveyard, and not only that, but this is also a very, at times, cozy and heartwarming book as well. There's a lot to do with found family, and there are just some really great relationships that develop. Now, even though it has its kind of sinister or kind of shady moments, I think this is an all-around good book for most audiences, and I really did enjoy this. Oh, one other thing. I like to read the physical book and listen to the audio at the same time. Neil Gaiman narrates all of his own books, and he is an amazing audiobook narrator. He has the best voice. He has this deep, deep British accent voice, and it is just soothing and just magical and entertaining. And also, he brings his books to life. He is obviously the author, so he knows exactly what inflections to make. He knows exactly what he wanted the reader to get out of those moments. So I absolutely recommend to, if you don't have access to the physical, but you want to listen to the audio, that would be a great option too. So the next one, I am kind of surprised that I am even brave enough to put this on the list because I don't recommend plays very often. I do enjoy reading plays, but I know that they're not everybody's favorite. And this particular one is a book that I was basically forced to read when I was in high school, but it has stuck with me since then. And I always kind of come back to it. And I think that it is a great book to read this time of year. And that is The Crucible by Arthur Miller. So this is so atmospheric and so fall to me because it takes place in Salem, Massachusetts, and basically we have this story of these rival teenagers, and one falsely accuses the other of witchcraft. And once one is accused, then the town just starts to, it's like a disease that's spreading, and there's more and more women that are getting accused of witchcraft, and it just causes mass hysteria. And it is a very fast-paced, propulsive read. It's very compelling. There's a lot going on in here, and some of the characters have to make very tough decisions, and I really enjoy this. I can't believe that a book or a play that I read, 25 years ago has still stuck with me. And I found it just as entertaining then as I do today. So if you are up for a different kind of read, I highly recommend taking a chance on this play, and I think that you'll enjoy it, and it should definitely put you in that fall kind of Halloween mood. I have another classic, and that is going to be Dracula. So obviously, I'm not going to go into too much. We all kind of have a vague understanding or a deep understanding of what the story of Dracula is. But what I will point out about this and why I really enjoy this book, not only is it the environment and kind of the mood or vibe of the book. It is very creepy. It is very gothic. But what I didn't realize about this book is that it's epistolary. So it is told completely through diary and journal entries and letters. So I just found that to be such an interesting way to present this story. And I had no idea that that's how it was put forward. So I just love the idea of being able to be privy to a writer's innermost thoughts, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they want to remain private and a part of them, and not sharing with everyone in the outside world. I just love having that insight. And then also there's letters back and forth between people. I love that aspect of this as well. You start to be able to pick up on things within the relationships of the two people that are sending the letters back and forth. So although this is a horror novel, and it is obviously a classic horror novel, I just really felt that the relationships in here were well built. I thought that the characters, even though it was epistolary, I thought that we learned a lot about the characters, and it had moments in it that were really creepy because you're getting the explanation from the person that experienced it firsthand. And I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I think if you've never read Dracula, you should definitely give it a chance. Now, I think that I would be really silly if I talked about books that kind of put me in that fall, spooky, atmospheric mood, and I didn't talk about at least one Stephen King novel. Now, I know that there are a lot of Stephen King haters out there, but I don't look to Stephen King to be providing me with top tier literary fiction. I turn to Stephen King when I want to be creeped out, when I want to read something a little scary or gory or disturbing, and I basically just want to be entertained. And the book that I always go to for Stephen King for that purpose is The Shining. So once again, this is going to be a book that a lot of people kind of know the basic premise of, mainly because a lot of people have watched the movie. And if you have watched the movie but have not read the book, if you enjoyed the movie, I definitely think that you would enjoy the book even more. The movie, although the movie is great, it doesn't tell everything. There's a lot in the book that wasn't represented in the movie. And there are also a lot of things that were in the movie that didn't necessarily happen in the book either. So I found that to be very interesting. This was an instance where I actually watched the movie before I read the book. So I kind of went into this book thinking, oh, I'm not really going to learn anything. It's just going to be a repeat of the book or the story or movie. But I was actually pleasantly surprised that there was so much more to this book. And I'm not gonna lie, I found the book to be even creepier than the movie, which says a lot about Stephen King as an author, that he is able to just paint that picture and he is able to just evoke these feelings and these emotions and the making the hair stand up on the back of your neck just with his words. And I definitely appreciate him as an author being able to do that. So if you've never seen the movie, if you've never read the book, I recommend you at least do one of the two because both I think are fantastic and perfect for this time of year. But if you've ever considered reading the book and thought, well, no, I've seen the movie, I'm good, definitely give this a chance because I think you're going to get a lot more out of it. Now, the next, the four that I've already covered, those are going to be more of the books that I would recommend to just about anybody that was looking for books set this time of year or had that basic, atmosphere associated with them. The next three that I talk about, we're starting to get into a little bit of darker territory, and there could be things in these other three books that a reader might find very disturbing or off-putting, and I will just say tread lightly with them. And hopefully, if any of them sound interesting to you and you think you have the stomach for them, I obviously highly recommend these. But we're going to start with one that's probably the mildest of the three. And I don't know why I don't hear more about this book. This book is probably one of my favorite books that I have ever read. And I think it was written maybe like 2015, 2016. So it's been out for a while. And to be honest, I only really started watching BookTube a few years ago. So maybe when it came out, there was more buzz and talk about it. But I just wanted to take an opportunity to put this out there in case there are any of you that are not familiar with it. And that is The Library at Melchor by Scott Hawkins. So this is going to be one of those books, and I hate when people say this, but it is so true for this book. The less you know going in, the better this book is going to be. As a matter of fact, I would even probably try to convince you not to even read the back, because it does give some things away that I think would be really cool as a reader to kind of just discover on your own. So this book is, it is set in, there's two settings. So there is the library, which is this infinite library that goes on and on and on, and it holds all of the books that have ever been written, all of the knowledge that's ever been captured, and then it takes place in the real world. Now, there are so many fun and interesting characters in this book. So this infinite library is run by this man, and I think they only refer to him as Father. And Father, several years ago, because I believe everybody is kind of in their 30s in this book, but like 20 years prior, Father goes and he started collecting these orphans that were like around maybe age 10, maybe they were younger, I can't remember that detail, but he collected several orphans and he took them under his wing, and basically he assigned each of them what they call a catalog, and then living in that library, they had access to everything they needed to learn about that specific catalog, and they become basically the experts on this, and there's nothing that they don't know about that particular subject. So we have one that his catalog was war and battle and combat. We have another whose catalog was death. We have another who was a healer, and she knows everything about healing and can even resurrect the dead. And then we have our main character, her name is Carolyn, and she is an expert in languages. So she can communicate with basically anybody. So the story, like I said, I don't want to get too in depth with what is going on because I think that it should be a surprise for readers, but there is so much going on in here. This is a story that you read the first page and you are immediately in the action. And I love books like that. Like there's no slow burn. You immediately jump in and you kind of learn what's going on as we go. And there is so much action. There are so many disturbing things in here. There is one particular scene in here that I will never forget reading. It is the most, it's one of the most, like I said, disturbing, vile scenes that I have ever read. But it was effective. There's also a lot of violence and cruelty, and it is not for the faint of heart, but I think that it works, and I absolutely ate this up. It was so good, and no matter how kind of disgusted or off-put I was, the book was just so good and the story was so good that none of that mattered. I just kept going, and I absolutely love this book. This is a it's hard to put this into one genre. If you love fantasy, if you love sci-fi, if you love horror, if you love a good thriller, this ticks all of those boxes. And I cannot believe that this particular author, Scott Hawkins, this was his debut novel, and this is, I believe, up to now, it's the only thing that he's ever written. Scott Hawkins, if you are out there, please write more books. This was absolutely amazing, and I would recommend this to just about anybody, with obviously those warnings that if you get to a point where you don't think that you're gonna like it, just stop. But if you are at all interested, I mean, it has an infinite library in it, for goodness sakes. Like, give it a chance. I think that this is one that you will enjoy. And I just, like I said, I want to see more people pick up this book because I just haven't heard enough about it, and I think that it's fantastic and one of my top reads of all time. All right, now the next two, we're definitely getting darker still, and the next book that I want to talk about is, I hate to say that this is one of my favorite books, but it is, and I don't know what that says about me as a person. But that book is Tender is the Flesh by Augustina Bazterrica. And this is probably one of the most nauseating books that I have ever read. I was completely sick to my stomach the entire time. It was vile, it was disgusting, it was cruel, but I loved every single minute of it. It was a ride. It was dystopian to a level of dystopian that I would never, ever want to see the world actually get to. And the premise of this is so disgusting. But it was done so well, and I loved it. So this book, if you are not familiar with it, this is a book that follows, I think the character's name is Marcus or Marcos. He works in a meat processing plant, and I think that they deal with beef. So he's used to slaughtering beef for food. Well, something happens, and there is a virus that is either released or develops that makes all animals inedible to humans. So obviously, us being a world that consumes so much animal meat and products, that happening really restricts the food supply, and they make it legal to start basically slaughtering humans for meat. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, they call kind of that phase the transition of moving from animals to humans, and then they call humans special meat. Now, our main character, Marcos, goes from having to slaughter cows to having to slaughter humans. And these humans are, it's not like they go, and grab someone's grandma and slaughter her. They are raising these humans just like they would cattle or, any other type of meat that we would eat from animals. But something happens where Marcos, he kind of steps away from being numb to what he's doing to humans, and he opens up his heart just a little bit, and it has very, very, very vile circumstances that come with it. So, but it's disgusting, it's deplorable, but I still loved it. And I think that if you are a fan of body horror, or you think that this is something that you can stomach, it is an absolute banger of a book, and I loved it. Now, I have one more book to talk about, and this is probably, like, Tender is the Flesh is obviously a book that I would not recommend to a lot of people. This next one is going to be even more questionable as to who I would recommend this to, or who I think would enjoy this book. And I say enjoy loosely. I don't think there's anyone out there that truly enjoys this book, but this is one of the scariest, violent, crass, crude, just disgusting novel that I have ever read, but it is done so well that I cannot help but love it. And that is Hurricane Season by Fernanda Melchor. Now, this is a book that was shortlisted for the International Booker Prize. So that kind of gives you hopefully a feeling for, although this tackles very tough and difficult topics, that it is very literary, and it does an amazing job for it to be considered for the International Booker. So this book, oh, I forgot to mention too, this is a translated piece, obviously, if it's the International, and it was translated by Sophie Hughes. So Hurricane Season, basically, it takes place in a Mexican village, and there is this woman that they refer to as the witch, and they kind of go to her whenever they need something. You know, she'll give them, you know, brews and potions, and they'll come to her with their ailments and their woes, and she'll do what she can to help the town. Now, although they come to her, they're also very fearful of her. She lives in this huge dilapidated house, and she also has a daughter. And one day they find the witch's body bloated in basically like an irrigation canal, and she is dead. And the story starts to go into, like, to figure out who it was that killed her, the motives that they had, why they did what they did, but also you're learning about all of the people that are involved in the crime. And this is just, it's everything that happened is so horrific, but it is believable, which is so scary. The way that the author presented everything, you do kind of step into the minds of those people that are involved, and you start to learn the most horrible things about humans and the horrible things that we are capable of doing. And she does not hold back at all. I believe that she wrote this book with zero restraint. She said that she was going to do something, and she went for it, and she didn't care. I think that one of the biggest things about this book that could potentially be a turnoff for a lot of readers is the language. The language is foul. It is, she comes up with curse words that I have never heard before, and combinations. The way that the way that she talks about females and male thoughts toward females, and there is nothing that is off limits for this book. And I think that she just did an amazing job. The writing is beautiful. How she could take such a stark, ugly story and turn it into something of beauty with her words was just amazing to me. And although this is definitely not going to be for everyone, if you think that it is something that you could be okay with, if you think that you are brave enough to dive into this disturbing, unsettling, haunting, just absolutely despicable story, then I would say give it a chance, and who knows, you might love it as much as I did. And yeah, like I said, the first few books I talked about, I think every reader is going to enjoy, but this is probably one of the darkest, sadistic, just gross books that I have ever read, but there's so much else in it that makes it worth reading. So Hurricane Season-Fernanda Melchor. And then last but not least, I told you I was going to tell you what book I was going to cozy up with today. And that is Cursed Bunny by Bora Chung. This is translated by Anton Her. This is another book that was shortlisted for the International Booker a few years ago. It's a collection of short stories, and I have just read the first one. And in case you're wondering, the first story is about a woman who finds a head in her toilet that talks to her, and this head is made from her excrement, so it is like a part of her, and the head refers to her as its mother. So yeah, just to give you a taste of what this is about. I'm really enjoying it so far. It's very weird, but hopefully I enjoy that as well. So I apologize for the noise. My robot vacuum has kicked on, and I should have known that that was coming. But if there are any book recommendations that you have that kind of fit that mood and that ones that you turn to, let me know in the comments. I'd love to get some more recommendations. If you have read any of these books, please let me know. And until next time, I will see you later, and happy reading. Bye.